freaking cheap! This stage design reeks of toxic waste. How does anybody guess they would be there? You don't! Not the first time! Whoever created this stage must be some asinine dropout that didn't even finish college or something. Yes? Come on! Yes! Yes! No! Who the heck designed this game? What the holy mother of...
In the earlier years of YouTube, I would be searching videos on anything gaming related to watch and entertain myself with. However, before the existence of YouTube, I watched so much of ZDTV, later known as Tech TV, and would merge later with G4, watching many shows related to gaming, as well as the Japanese Ninja Warrior. But once YouTube hits the scene, I've been watching videos of uploaders reviewing and giving thoughts of various games and accessories, and it was from there that I started watching this man named James Rolfe, known for his series called The Angry Video Game Nerd, playing the titular character reviewing video games that are plain bad or gave him so much frustration in his youth. He's got a very outgoing personality and fun to talk to, especially when I was able to meet him twice, once at the now defunct Screwattack gaming convention, god I wish that convention came back, and then years later in Retropalooza Arlington. Back when GameTrailers.com was still around, along with their partnership with Screwattack, I would often look forward to seeing new videos from the Angry Video Game Nerd for me to download, until later nerd videos would surface instead on both YouTube and Cinemassacre.com, his personal website. He even has his own film in 2014, and as one would expect, production values of the movie are very cheap and nonsensical, which is what he intended, referencing the styles of B-movies as well as unorthodox movie direction from the likes of Roger Corman or Ed Wood. Basically intending to make a movie that's so bad it's good type of film, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, it was from James Rolfe that I started watching various other people's videos online, such as the nerd's good friend Mike Matei, the founders of Screwattack, stuttering Craig Skistimus and handsome Thomas Hanley, and Destin Liguri, formerly of Screwattack's news section called Hard News, among other former members of the company. Other personalities I would find myself watching would be the likes of a certain movie reviewer who has been rather controversial lately, but we'll get into that later. And there are also other reviewers that are likely influenced by the nerd, like Some Call Me Johnny, who I wish to meet someday. Come on, Retropalooza, Houston, and Arlington, as well as Classic Game Fest, make him a guest at y'all's conventions already! There's also Joe Redifer and Dave White of GameSack, who I've also met at Retropalooza Arlington. Canadian reviewer Blonde Guy Gamer, whose Double Dragon 5 and Earthworm Jim 3D videos are my favorites from him. My good friend G to the Next Level. And Mark Smith of Retrocore, a British game reviewer based in Japan, just to name a few, and he's another YouTuber that I wish to meet in the future.
It was from the nerd, as well as all other aforementioned personalities, that inspired me to actually want to start this channel back in 2017. Not only reviewing some of the video games that I played, but also talk about all the conventions and vacations that I've been to, expressing my insight and thoughts of each of them, as well as making top 20 videos to entertain you viewers. Not only would I express my thoughts on some of the bad video games that I played, but I also talk about and review some good video games that I would give as recommendations to you viewers, as well as entertaining you viewers at home the best way I can, just like the nerd and all others before me. And that's where today's subject comes in. Here's my review of The Angry Video Game Nerd Adventures 1 and 2.
Yes, a video game where you control the nerd himself, going through different dimensions of games based on the numerous complaints he has on the various bad games he's played over the years. And there are 3 games in the series, the first 2 games and their remasters, and I'll be going through each of them. So let's start playing this buttload of crud and see if they're worth playing, or end up being steaming gallons of long-expired dairy products. Let's begin with the first AVGN Adventures, developed by a collaboration of Screwattack's gaming division and a small indie group called Freakzone Games in 2013 for Steam. The basic story is that the nerd, along with Mike Matei and the BS Man, another character created and played by Rolfe, just playing a bad game just for the heck of it, when the game becomes sentient and dragged everyone into the game itself, with the nerd being forced in by his frontal region, which is a reference to Cheetah within Action 52. You then take control of the nerd himself inside the tutorial level, armed with an NES zapper that can actually destroy things, and it's greeted by a fairy named Nagi, yeah, you know the reference, and we'll try to over-tutorialize everything, how to use weapons, power-ups, and so forth, and whenever you finish the level, you get this victory screen complete with intentional spelling errors. Once that's done, you'll be taken to a Mega Man-like stage-select screen of varying themes, ranging from a stage based on Castlevania, complete with a cameo of that angry moon from a certain legendary Heroes game series, to a stage where everything is all happy to see you get killed, or a fantasy stage, just to name a few, complete with a hypothetical beginner's trap that was referenced from Super Pitfall. This entire game is created to be very hard to play on purpose, as the game itself is inspired by numerous games from the 80s and early 90s that were deemed very challenging, causing players to either lose so much quarters or cause so much frustration, like Contra or even the very first Mega Man game, as those elements are used for this game. Even the easiest setting, which gives you infinite lives, doesn't matter much, as the stage layout remains the same with many hazards that you need to avoid. These hazards can range from spike traps, walls that can crush you, knockback whenever you get hit, losing your power-up when you get hit even once, lasers and deathbox that can kill you in one hit, and after-hit invincibility that won't save you from either one. Let's not forget that Mega Man-inspired disappearing blocks. And when you die, the nerd will not hold back on his thoughts of the stage and of the game itself, the game being self-aware, so to speak. It's like watching the show while also playing the game, and many of the quotes he says upon death, no matter how grotesque they sound, they can be quite humorous, especially if you're a fan of the nerd.
Just for the record, in terms of all the vulgarity that you see in this game, I'll let the game do the swearing for me, just for a heads up.
Aside from the nerd, there are other playable characters to choose from once you rescue them. You first have the nerd, who can fire in all directions and can perform precision aiming, Kyle Justin, the guitar guy, who can fire through walls and has the fastest running speed, Mike Matei, armed with a lightsaber, who can open some passages and is the highest jumper, and the BS Man, whose attack output is the strongest and best for bosses and can double jump, but slow running speed. Also worth noting is that the nerd can also lose the Super Scope power-up if you change characters by accident. Many of the stages have some secret areas with more items and power-ups like rocks, beer for HP, or the glitch gremlin, just to name some of them, and cameos of different personalities from the internet, with some that make sense like Wiz and Boomstick from Death Battle, to some that are just padded in at random like the Destructoid Robot or Jim Stephanie Sterling, for example. For as hard as the game is, I have so much fun playing this game, and that's due to how I was already used to playing the old games beforehand, and given the style of gameplay, it's mostly trial and error. It is very much a love letter to fans of the nerd, ranging from the pros and cons of the games he reviewed to some of the bosses in the game, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or that annoying AI head from the Atari Jaguar game Cybermorph. In addition, it has a great soundtrack to listen to, and the graphics are no doubt inspired by 8-bit video games from that era, with only one stage being inspired by the Atari 2600, but very nice touches nonetheless, and it has nice replay value. At first I thought this game would be a one-off, but when I attended the now-defunct PAX South in 2015, out of all the exhibitors, the sequel, AVGN Adventures 2 Assimilation, would be in development after trying the demo out. I was pumped and looking forward to its release on Steam, and in the spring of 2016, the sequel is out and I immediately logged in just to get it. The story begins with a peaceful day on Earth when a giant laser hits the world, turning the planet into a garbage game, while the nerd, who was unaffected, wakes up from being wasted and finds not only his house but the world altered, and has to find a way to set things right by first defeating an alien who turns back into a normal Mike Matei. Just a heads up that in the sequel, the nerd is your only character, which is alright, as I'll explain the rest in this video. It's also funny how the nerd is aware of some of the assets from the first game being reused for the sequel, despite how wasted he was from the opening. Instead of the ferry, Mike Matei handles the tutorial stage and warns of the nerd of his stuff being stolen, and as he traverses through his altered house, he gets into his first fight with the nostalgia critic, who, admittedly, I once liked watching his videos, but after the whole change the channel movement from 2018, I stopped watching him and the channel altogether. Though going off topic a little bit, one thing I often wondered from the nostalgia critic is that in his Inspector Gadget video, why did he skip out talking about that one scene of Gadget grabbing the guru by his you-know-whats? Anyway, upon defeating the critic, it's up to the nerd to get 6 magical triangles and get the whole world back to normal by force. Instead of the Mega Man style stage select, you now have a map that branches into 5 pathways, each with a different theme. In the first game, the theme is mostly about video games, but in the sequel, each pathway references the nerd's other projects, whether it be 2 pathways being about video games, his horror movie review segment called Monster Madness, board games where the theme is about board games and toys, or even the AVGN movie itself, and you have to go through each act and then the bosses themselves. Each stage have more gimmicks than before, making the game even harder than the last game. The death blocks are back in full force, but there's also electric seaweed from Ninja Turtles, the slot car that glitches up at random in the end, a giant alligator that chases you underwater, stages with colorless grainy filters, and anti-gravity controls. They really ramped up the difficulty almost immediately. One minor nitpick I have is that it's unfortunate not to see the nerd make any funny death quotes anymore whenever he dies in this game. As the nerd is your only character, he still plays the same, but in the sequel, the other characters are now replaced with special items that you can find. The first item is your loafers, which are automatically given to you from the start, allowing you to scale up or slide down walls a la Mega Man X. Eventually, you'll find other permanent upgrades hidden in some stages like the laser scope, which create easy mode-like platforms, the power glove to punch some walls and make passages similar to Mike Matei's lightsaber, or the SNES Super Scope for stronger shots, just to name a few. And if you want the true ending of the game, you need to find all of the nerd's equipment. But you're not going to know that, so you're going to have to make so many guesses in this game and explore every last inch of every action stage until you get them all. You still have beer to restore some HP, but there are also some new items like a spread shot that can be upgraded 2 times, but each level is lost after taking a hit. The rocks from the first game are more buffed and useful in the sequel. There are literally F-bombs which are just as effective, and a beer keg that restores all of your HP, which is useful in the heat of the moment. But if your HP is at maximum, the nerd breaks the 4th wall by telling you not to waste it yet. To make it even harder, 2 of the screen nukes from the first game are non-existent in this game. You can also collect 4 cartridges in each stage that spell nerd, but sadly they do absolutely frickin' nothing, and they're just there for decoration and bragging rights. Like the first game, the bosses are fun to fight, but they can be tricky if you're playing the game for the first time, but it doesn't take long to get the pattern down. Act 2 of every stage will have a mid-boss fight, whether it's the critic, the nerd's fecal matter clone from the Magnavox Odyssey episode, or the nerd's other character, Board James, who plays board games when he's bored. Some of the bosses include bootleg Battletoads with disgusting names, a cat robot for some reason, Mr. Bucket, Count Dracula, or even General Dark Onward, the main antagonist of the AVGN movie. For many of these bosses, the only strategy is to shoot them down until you win, but against Onward, you gotta be more creative with him, and it's probably my favorite boss in the entire game. I won't spoil it any further, so I will say that even though I like the first game, the sequel doubles up on its so hard it's good factor, from the stage designs, the intentional enemy and hazard placements, the representations of stage themes of the nerd's different projects he's done over the years, the colorful 8-bit graphics, and a great soundtrack to go along with it. It definitely brings excellent fan service, not just on the nerd, but everything else James Rolfe has done in his life, and Freakzone making references to every aspect of his work life are genius, making replay value of the sequel even higher than the first game. However, in 2019, it was announced by Screenwave Media, the company that's been helping out the nerd with his videos in recent years after Screwattack folded within Rooster Teeth in 2015, that both AVGN Adventures 1 and 2 would be remastered into one whole package as AVGN 1 and 2 Deluxe. When I saw this at PAX South 2019, I was told by Screenwave that they, along with the original developers at Freakzone, would take the existing foundations of both games and have them both tweaked to make the experience much better, or much harder, take your pick. They would be released on Steam and Switch in 2020, with the PS4 and Xbox One versions some months later. Both of these games would have some different alterations in some stages. The first game would run more on the second game's mechanics, such as having smoother controls and removing the nerd's death quotes to make respawning that much faster. Some changes also include adding more instrumentals to some existing songs, changes in some background designs, such as in Super Happy Fun Time, where the sun is even happier in anticipation to see the nerd get killed even more, removing all of the different cameos and replacing them with future versions of the nerd, telling himself of all of the things changed in Deluxe. There are also some changes to the boss designs and strategies. For copyright reasons, and possibly due to the 2018 Channel Awesome incident, the Nostalgia Critic was removed from the game, and any references to the AVGN movie, which also includes Dark Onward, have been removed when it is said that Screenwave holds the rights to the movie characters, and that the developers would want the overall story to have more cohesion with the current continuity of the show. Similar to how every Dragon Ball film, prior to DBZ Battle of Gods, would be considered non-canon to the show's continuity, and it's only until Battle of Gods and later films in the series would they be added in as canon. However, new to the remastering is an extra chapter known as the Tower of Torment, which is only unlocked after both games were defeated. I won't spoil it too much, but I can tell you right now that these stages are tougher than in 1 and 2, so you really need to be more alert and have better reflexes if you wish to survive the stages in this chapter. Overall, I enjoyed the AVGN Adventures series, both the originals and their remasters. Given my love for the nerds' videos, it's great to get a laugh at both the Hard as Nails gameplay and the meta humor that comes with it. The games are solid from start to end, then I'll give this series a 9. However, I will say that these games are hard to recommend, and I say that due to the fact that this game is more of a love letter to those that not only grew up watching the nerd on the internet, but also well versed in the run and gun genre from the 80s and 90s. Especially when many of today's gamers are Generation Zers that mostly have more attention to playing the latest Call of Duty or a new season of Fortnite, or watching the first thing on TV or internet that catches their eyes, not knowing who the AVGN is to begin with, since today's generation are more focused on personalities like PewDiePie, Markiplier, Youngya, and so forth. But if you're lucky enough to experience the nerd firsthand or out of curiosity, along with giving run and gunners a chance and wanting a tough challenge, then I say give these games a try. You might enjoy them and also get some laughs out of each game's humor.
Well, those weren't easy games to review. I mean, having to go through each game twice, having to be killed every which way, every few seconds or so, feels more like my self-mutilating torture session back when I was reviewing Mega Man X7 back in 2017. Yeah, that's a memory right there. But at least it's not too bad. So hopefully all other videos after this won't be so bad. Maybe. Well, before I go, I would like to give a quick shout out not only to the Angry Video Game Nerd, but also all other channels that gave me some inspiration to start this channel. And for that, I give you my thanks. I really mean that. And I will do my best to try to make more videos in a consistent basis. Yeah, it's not exactly easy for me, especially throughout this whole year. But, long story short, at least I'm back to where I'm supposed to be. Anyway, if you find this video interesting, along with all other content on my channel, feel free to subscribe to my channel at any time, ring the bell for any new videos coming your way, and don't forget to follow me on social media. Your support will be greatly appreciated. Until then, this has been Wasashi X, and I bid you all farewell, take care, and stay tuned. Well, I'm next to the Chronicles. I got one game for the PS3 and 360 that I'm going to review next. It's a first-person shooter that's been in developmental hell for like probably 13 or 14 years or so. But after those years that passed by, well, it's gotta be good. Right? F this.